In the southern Caribbean, roughly 600 miles north of the Venezuelan coast, there sits a chain of islands called the Lesser Antilles. If you trace your finger along an old nautical chart, you'll find names that haven't changed in 300 years. Martinique, Dominica, St. Vincent. Isla de Muerta, well, that one you won't find on any map, but you'll find the ship that sailed there. Because somewhere between real naval history and Hollywood myth, a team of engineers, designers, and obsessive shipbuilders created the most famous pirate vessel ever put to screen. A ship so convincing that millions of people watched it and never once asked whether it was real. The Black Pearl wasn't just a movie prop, it was a masterpiece of engineering disguised as a fantasy. And the story of how it was built, rebuilt, redesigned, and eventually sunk to the bottom of the ocean is, in its own way, just as wild as the films themselves. To understand what makes the Black Pearl so brilliant, you need to understand what a real pirate ship actually looked like. And here's what the movies never tell you. Pirates didn't build ships, they stole them. During the golden age of piracy, which ran roughly from 1690 to 1730, pirates were essentially maritime criminals working with stolen equipment. A pirate captain didn't commission a custom warship from a shipyard. Before we go any further, I need to stop for a second, because what I've been showing you in these videos only scratches the surface. And I realized at some point that the full picture, the actual pirate code, word for word, the real punishment records, the exact treasure division shares, the ports that secretly funded them, it doesn't fit in a video. I put it all into one document, the Black Flag Codex. It's linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Now, let's keep going. He captured a merchant vessel, threw the cargo overboard, and started modifying it for combat. The most common pirate vessel was actually pretty small. Sloops, which had a single mast and about 10 cannons, were the workhorses of Caribbean piracy. They displaced about 100 tons and could carry around 75 men. They were fast, maneuverable, and light enough to sail through shallow coastal waters where the bigger Navy ships couldn't follow. That was the whole strategy. Hit fast, grab what you can, and disappear into water that's too shallow for the warships chasing you. But the more ambitious pirates wanted something bigger. Something that could carry more men, more cannons, and more loot. And so they started capturing larger ships. Brigantines, which had 2 masts and roughly 10 cannons. Frigates, which were warships in their own right. And occasionally, if a pirate captain was particularly bold or particularly lucky, he'd capture an East Indiaman. Now, East Indiamen were the crown jewels of 18th century merchant shipping. These were the largest merchant vessels built during the era, some displacing over 1,400 tons. They measured roughly 175 feet in length, carried crews of over 100 men, and were armed with anywhere from 25 to 32 cannons. From a distance, they were practically indistinguishable from warships. And that was intentional. During times of conflict, East Indiamen were often painted to look like Royal Navy ships to discourage pirates from attacking. Their hulls were deeper and squarer than actual warships, creating more space for cargo below deck. Their cannons were shorter in barrel length than Navy guns, which meant less range and accuracy, but they still packed enough firepower to ruin your afternoon. The Black Pearl, in the lore of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, is described as a combination of 2 ship types, a galleon and an East Indiaman. And this is where the fictional engineering gets interesting, because in the real world, those 2 designs serve completely different purposes. A galleon was a multi-decked warship used primarily from the 16th to the 18th century. They were the backbone of the Spanish treasure fleet, those massive convoys that hauled silver and gold from the New World back to Spain. Galleons were heavy, slow, and built like floating fortresses. They were designed to take punishment, not outrun it. An East Indiaman, on the other hand, was all about long-haul commerce. These ships were engineered for months-long voyages across the Indian Ocean, carrying everything from silk and spices to tea and porcelain. They were wider in the beam than warships, giving them more storage space. The hull shape below the waterline was fuller and more boxy, which sacrificed some speed but dramatically increased cargo capacity. So when the filmmakers described the Black Pearl as a hybrid of these 2 designs, What they're really saying is that this ship combines the firepower and imposing structure of a galleon with the deep cargo holds and long voyage durability of an East Indiaman. In the film's universe, the Pearl started life as a merchant vessel called the Wicked Wench, operating under contract for the East India Trading Company. Captain Jack Sparrow was commanding her when he refused to transport a cargo of slaves. The East India Company responded by burning the ship and leaving Sparrow to die. Then, through a deal with the sea god Davy Jones, the Wicked Wench was raised from the ocean floor, reborn as the Black Pearl. And this origin story actually mirrors what real pirates did. Blackbeard captured a French slave ship called La Concorde in 1717 off the coast of Martinique, and he spent months refitting it into the Queen Anne's Revenge. He added more guns, bringing the total up to roughly 40 cannons. He modified the rigging and sails for greater speed and maneuverability. He stripped out unnecessary cargo space to make the ship lighter and faster. And he adorned the entire thing with skull and crossbones, flags, and dark paint to make it look as terrifying as possible. The parallels are obvious. Take a working merchant ship, strip it, refit it, paint it black. Turn it into something that makes other ships turn and run just at the sight of it. That's what the Black Pearl represents, and it's exactly what real pirates were doing 300 years ago. But the fictional specifications of the Black Pearl push well beyond what any real pirate ship could achieve. The Pearl is listed at 165 feet in length, which puts her in East Indiaman territory. She carries 32 12-pound cannons, which is serious firepower by any standard. An actual naval frigate of the period might carry between 20 and 40 guns, so the Pearl is right in that range. She's described as nigh uncatchable, the fastest ship in the Caribbean, capable of outrunning anything the Royal Navy can put on the water. And this is where the engineering gets fun, because making a ship that big go that fast is incredibly difficult. Speed in a sailing vessel is determined by a combination of factors: hull length, hull shape below the waterline, the ratio of sail area to displacement, and the smoothness of the hull surface. Real ships in this era would have their hulls covered in marine growth within months of being launched, which created drag. Pirates dealt with this by careening their ships, pulling them onto a beach and scraping the hull clean. Some wealthier operators had their hulls sheathed in copper, which prevented marine growth and dramatically improved speed. The Royal Navy started copper sheathing their warships in the 1770s, and the difference was immediately noticeable. The Black Pearl's supernatural speed is explained in the films by her deal with Davy Jones, but the production designers actually built visual cues into the ship that suggest real engineering reasons for her performance. The hull is notably sleeker than a typical galleon. The bow has a more aggressive rake to it, cutting through waves rather than pushing against them. And the sail plan is enormous, with massive square-rigged sails on 3 masts plus a jib boom extending forward. That's an extraordinary amount of canvas for a ship her size, and in real-world terms, more sail area means more speed. Now here's where we need to talk about the black sails themselves, because that's one of the Pearl's most iconic features, and it has a real historical basis that rarely gets talked about. Black sails on a pirate ship weren't just a dramatic choice. In the real world, sails were made from canvas or linen and were typically off-white or tan when new. Over time, exposure to salt water, sun, and mildew would darken them. Some sailors deliberately treated their sails with tar or other preservatives to extend their lifespan, and this treatment turned the sails dark brown or black. Pirates who couldn't exactly pull into port and order a fresh set of sails from the local chandler were more likely to be sailing with old, weathered, tarred sails. So the image of dark sails on a pirate ship isn't Hollywood invention. It's grounded in the reality of ships that had been at sea for years without proper maintenance. The production team understood this. When they designed the Black Pearl sails, they didn't make them a clean, uniform black. They're tattered, patched, riddled with holes, and they look like they've been through a century of storms. Some sections appear burned, others are clearly repaired with mismatched fabric. The sails tell a story all on their own. This is a ship that has been through absolute hell and keeps sailing anyway. That visual storytelling is one of the reasons the Black Pearl works so well on screen. Every inch of the ship communicates age, violence, and survival. But here's the part of the story that never makes it into the DVD extras. The engineering required to put the Black Pearl on screen was, in many ways, more impressive than the fictional ship itself. Because the filmmakers didn't just draw a cool pirate ship and hand it to a CGI team. They built real ships, multiple real ships. And the construction story spans over a decade, multiple oceans, and involves a decommissioned oil platform supply vessel from the Gulf of Mexico. When production began on Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl in October 2002, director Gore Verbinski and producer Jerry Bruckheimer made a decision that the film industry thought was insane. At the time, most Hollywood executives expected a movie based on a Disney theme park ride to be a modest production. Instead, Verbinski wanted to shoot with real ships on open water. Industry veterans thought he was out of his mind. This was supposed to be a $140 million movie about animatronic pirates, and here was the director insisting on practical effects and real ocean footage. For the first film, the Black Pearl was constructed as a set built from the hull up on top of a flat barge. The barge could be towed into position for filming in open water, with a tugboat pulling it into place. The set included the deck, the rigging, the masts, and enough of the hull to look convincing from the camera angles they needed. But the system had serious limitations. The barge bobbed awkwardly in the water, nothing like how a real ship would move. It took forever to position correctly, and every minute spent lining up the barge was money-burning. The interior scenes were shot separately. The captain's cabin of the Black Pearl was built on a soundstage at KABC-TV, an ABC television station in Glendale, California. That's right, Captain Jack Sparrow's quarters were filmed inside a local TV station. Meanwhile, the HMS Interceptor, the sleek British naval vessel that Jack steals in the first film, was portrayed by a very real ship called the Lady Washington. She's a 112-foot brig, a full-scale replica of an actual 18th century sailing vessel built in Aberdeen, Washington in 1989. For the film, she made a 40-day voyage from Long Beach, California, through the Panama Canal to the Isle of St. Vincent, nearly 9,800 nautical miles. During the voyage, the crew celebrated Christmas in the Panama Canal and watched a storm snap off the jib bow. The ship's captain, Mark Griffin, gave Johnny Depp a crash course in sailing the vessel and reportedly said the actor was a quick study. And when the Interceptor gets blown up by the Black Pearl's cannons in the film, the Lady Washington obviously wasn't destroyed. A detailed scale model was built and detonated for the sequence. The real ship sailed back through the Panama Canal to Aberdeen, completely intact. She still sails today. But the barge-based Black Pearl from the first film had to go. It was too slow, too unwieldy, and too expensive to keep repositioning. So when pre-production began on Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, which were being filmed back-to-back, the production team went looking for a better solution. They found it in Bayou La Batre, Alabama. The Sunset was a 109-foot steel-hulled vessel that had spent its working life as an offshore supply boat servicing oil derricks in the Gulf of Mexico. She was propeller-driven, fully motorized, and built to handle rough seas. She had no masts, no sails, no cannons, and absolutely nothing that looked like a pirate ship. But she had a steel hull that could take a beating, engines that could actually move her through the water under her own power, and enough deck space to build something extraordinary on top of her. Production designer Rick Heinrichs, who had won an Academy Award for his work on Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, was tasked with the transformation. Heinrichs described the challenge bluntly. The ship had to be affordable, it had to be floatable, and it had to look good. Those three requirements don't usually coexist in filmmaking. Heinrichs and his team, which included ship designer Bruce Crone, who had previously worked on the sailing vessels in Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, essentially built a wooden tall ship on top of a steel modern vessel. They added 3 full masts, complete rigging, an elaborately carved stern gallery, gun ports, and the distinctive black hull that fans would recognize instantly. Below the waterline, the Sunset remained unchanged. Her steel hull, her propeller, her engines, all of it was preserved exactly as it was. This meant the Black Pearl could motor through the water at speeds no barge could match, could maneuver precisely for camera setups, and could handle actual ocean conditions without putting the cast and crew at risk. Think about the engineering problem they solved. They needed something that looked like a 300-year-old wooden sailing ship from every angle the camera could see, but that functioned like a modern powered vessel from the waterline down. The result was a ship that was, quite literally, two ships in one. A steel-hulled workboat wearing a wooden pirate costume. The transformation of the Sunset into the Black Pearl for Dead Man's Chest involved a multi-million-dollar makeover. The rigging alone was enormously complex. Every rope, every pulley, every block and tackle had to look authentic to the period while also being structurally sound enough for actors to climb on, stunt performers to swing from, and the whole assembly to survive filming at sea. The masts had to be tall enough to look proportionally correct, but strong enough to handle wind loads while the ship was underway. The sails, those iconic tattered black sails, had to be engineered to actually catch wind without tearing apart, but also look like they were 3 centuries old and barely holding together. Heinrichs and his team preserved one element from the original barge-based Black Pearl from the first film. The weathered capstan, the large vertical rotating machine used for winding rope and raising anchors, was transferred directly from the first film's version to the rebuilt Sunset-based version. It was a small detail, but it ensured visual continuity between the films. If a sharp-eyed viewer paused the frame and compared the capstan in The Curse of the Black Pearl to the one in Dead Man's Chest, they'd find the same prop. That's the kind of obsessive attention to detail that separated this production from everything else in the genre. But the Sunset-based Black Pearl wasn't the only version built for the sequels. At Walt Disney Studios in Burbank, California, the production team constructed full-size interior sets of the Pearl's gun deck and hold on Stage 1. The captain's cabins for both the Black Pearl and the Edinburgh Trader, another ship in the film, were built on Stage 5. Stop for a second. What you just heard about the Pirate Code is the part that rewrites everything you thought you knew. But it only lands when you see the actual shares, the exact fractions written into the Articles of Agreement. The punishments, the port records, the names of the men who funded them from government offices. It's all in the Black Flag Codex, linked in the description. 5 seconds, grab it now, because what comes next builds directly on it. Link is below. QR code is on your screen. These interior sets gave the filmmakers complete control over lighting, camera angles, and the kind of detailed production design that's impossible to achieve on a ship at sea. The gun deck set, for instance, included dozens of functioning cannon carriages, wooden deck planks that had been individually aged and distressed, and lighting rigs that could simulate everything from tropical sunlight filtering through the gun ports to the eerie glow of a lantern during a nighttime battle. And then there was the third version of the Black Pearl, the one built specifically for the Maelstrom battle in At World's End. This version was mounted on a massive gimbal, a mechanical platform that could tilt and rotate the entire ship set to simulate the motion of a vessel caught in a giant whirlpool. The gimbal-mounted Pearl could rock back and forth, pitch forward and backward, and create the nauseating sensation of a ship being pulled into a spinning vortex of seawater. Actors and stunt performers were drenched with thousands of gallons of water pumped from high-pressure nozzles, while the gimbal tilted the deck at angles steep enough to send unsecured objects sliding. It was, by all accounts, one of the most physically demanding shoots in the franchise. So, during the making of At World's End alone, there were at least 3 separate Black Pearls in existence simultaneously. The Sunset-based seagoing version for open water sequences, the Burbank soundstage interiors for cabin and gun deck scenes, and the gimbal-mounted version for the Maelstrom. Each one was a fully realized set with its own construction crew, its own maintenance team, and its own set of engineering challenges. For the fourth film, On Stranger Tides, the Black Pearl's role in the story changed dramatically. In the plot, the Pearl has been shrunk and trapped inside a glass bottle by the pirate Blackbeard. This meant the filmmakers needed a completely different version of the ship, a meticulously detailed miniature that could be held in an actor's hand and still look like the Black Pearl at tiny scale. U.S. Property Master Kirk Corwin supervised the construction of the ship-in-a-bottle version, which was later digitally animated by visual effects supervisor Charles Gibson's team for scenes where the tiny Pearl's crew could be seen moving around inside the bottle. The sunset, meanwhile, was repurposed. Since the story of On Stranger Tides called for Blackbeard's ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, to be the primary vessel, the production team used the sunset as the base for the Queen Anne's Revenge instead. The same steel hull that had worn the Black Pearl's wooden disguise was now redressed as a completely different pirate ship. Same boat, different costume. By the time the fifth film, Dead Men Tell No Tales, was in production, the Sunset's physical transformation into the Black Pearl had been stripped away. The production relied more heavily on digital effects for ship sequences, marking a shift from the practical effects approach that had defined the earlier films. And then came the final chapter of the actual, physical Black Pearl. The 7-foot steel ship that had served as the foundation for one of cinema's most iconic vessels was towed from its resting place in Orange Beach, Alabama, to Panama City Beach, Florida. There, it was deliberately sunk 6 nautical miles southwest of St. Andrews Pass to become an artificial reef. Students from Haney Technical College welded pirate-themed props and decorations onto the hull before it made its final descent. The ship that had carried Captain Jack Sparrow across 3 films now sits on the ocean floor in Bay County, providing a habitat for marine life and a destination for recreational divers. There's something poetic about a fictional pirate ship ending its days as a reef, quietly serving the ocean long after the cameras stopped rolling. But the engineering story doesn't end with the physical ships. Industrial Light and Magic handled the digital effects for the franchise, creating fully digital versions of the Pearl for wide shots and complex action sequences. The digital Pearl was built from exhaustive reference photography of the practical ship. Every plank, every rope, every scratch in the paint was photographed, measured, and recreated digitally. When the film cut from a practical shot to a digital one, the transition was seamless because both versions were based on the same physical reality. ILM also had to make the Pearl look fast. The Sunset's top speed was nowhere near what a supernatural pirate ship should be doing, so the team digitally enhanced the wake, added spray, and increased the apparent speed of water rushing past the hull. They extended the rigging and sails in some shots, making the sail plan look even more aggressive than the physical version. One of the most technically challenging sequences was the Kraken attack in Dead Man's Chest. The actors performed on the Sunset-based deck while digital tentacles, water, and debris were added later. Every plank that would be shown cracking under a tentacle's grip had to be pre-scored and rigged with breakaway mechanisms. Sections of railing were built to collapse on cue. Water cannons simulated spray from tentacle impacts. And all of this had to happen while the camera captured real actors giving genuine performances of terror. The attention to period-accurate detail on the Black Pearl extended down to the smallest elements. The cannon carriages on the gun deck were based on real 18th-century naval artillery designs, with the correct wheel configurations, rope lashings, and iron hardware. The ship's wheel, the helm that Jack Sparrow so dramatically spins in multiple films, was designed to match the multi-spoked wheels found on large merchant vessels of the period. Even the design of the ship's figurehead, a skeletal female figure at the bow, was informed by real maritime traditions. Ships of the 17th and 18th centuries commonly featured elaborate carved figureheads, and pirate vessels that had been captured from merchant fleets would often modify or replace the figurehead to reflect the new identity of the ship. The Pearl's skeletal figurehead communicates instantly that this is a ship of death, a vessel that has crossed over from the world of legitimate commerce into something darker. The rigging design deserves its own discussion because it's one of the most overlooked aspects of the Pearl's engineering. A 3-masted sailing vessel like the Black Pearl would require miles of rope, hundreds of blocks and pulleys, and a rigging plan that allows the crew to control each sail independently. On a real sailing ship, the rigging is divided into two categories. Standing rigging supports the masts and doesn't move. Running rigging controls the sails and must be constantly adjusted. The production team for Pirates of the Caribbean had to create rigging that looked authentic enough to satisfy naval history enthusiasts, was strong enough for actors and stunt performers to climb and swing on, and could be set up and struck quickly as filming locations changed. The result was a hybrid system. Some of the rigging was functional, meaning it actually connected to pulleys and could be used to raise and lower the practical sails. Other elements were decorative, added purely for visual accuracy but not structurally connected to anything. And certain sections were specifically engineered as stunt rigging, reinforced with steel cables hidden inside the rope, tested to hold the weight of performers, and equipped with safety lines that could be digitally removed in post-production. When you watch Johnny Depp swinging from the Pearl's rigging in Dead Man's Chest, he's swinging from a rope that looks like hemp, but is actually a steel-reinforced safety system designed to support several hundred pounds of actor and stunt equipment. There's one more engineering detail that rarely gets discussed, but that fundamentally changed how the Black Pearl was perceived on screen: the ship's paint scheme. The real hull of the Sunset was bare steel, industrial gray, the kind of utilitarian surface you'd find on any commercial vessel. To transform it into the Black Pearl, the production team applied layers of black paint over the steel. But they didn't just paint it flat black. They used multiple tones and textures to create the appearance of aged, weathered wood. Dark browns, near blacks, hints of green where algae would have grown, patches of raw wood where paint had chipped away, scorch marks where fire had touched the hull. Each section was individually treated to tell its own story. The bow looked different from the stern. The waterline showed a different kind of wear than the upper hull. The gun ports had char marks from hundreds of imaginary cannon firings. This wasn't painting. It was storytelling through surface treatment. And it was so convincing that audiences worldwide accepted a steel-hulled motor vessel from Alabama as a centuries-old Caribbean pirate ship. When you step back and look at the full scope of the Black Pearl's engineering, what you're really looking at is one of the most ambitious practical effects projects in film history. Across 5 films and more than a decade of production, the Black Pearl existed as a barge-mounted set, a steel-hulled motor vessel disguised as a wooden tall ship, a gimbal-mounted action set, a meticulously crafted miniature, and a fully digital creation. Each version was engineered to solve specific problems. The barge gave them a floating platform when they had nothing else. The Sunset gave them a seaworthy vessel that could maneuver on open water. The gimbal gave them controlled chaos for the maelstrom. The miniature gave them the bottle sequence. And the digital version gave them everything else. The real pirates of the Golden Age would have recognized something familiar in this process. They took what was available: a supply boat from Alabama, a TV station in Glendale, a barge, a gimbal on a soundstage, and they modified it, adapted it, repurposed it, and turned it into something that looked and felt like the real thing. The pirates of the 18th century captured merchant ships and turned them into warships. The filmmakers of the 21st century captured a supply boat and turned it into the most famous pirate ship in the world. Different centuries, same principle. You work with what you've got, and you make it extraordinary. The Black Pearl now sits on the ocean floor off the coast of Florida, a steel skeleton wearing the remains of a pirate ship costume slowly being colonized by coral and sea life. Divers who visit the site report that fish swim in and out of the gun ports. Barnacles cover the hull where fake wood grain used to be. The props welded on by the technical school students, anchors and cannons and pirate-themed decorations are already becoming part of the reef ecosystem. It's a fitting end for a ship that was always more than the sum of its parts. Because the Black Pearl was never really about the steel or the wood or the paint or the rigging. It was about the engineering philosophy behind it. The willingness to take something ordinary, something that nobody would look at twice, and transform it into something that captures the imagination of an entire generation. That's what made the Black Pearl legendary. Not the supernatural speed, not the cursed crew, not even the tattered black sails. It was the simple, stubborn, brilliant idea that if you build it right, if you sweat the details, if you respect the history while pushing the boundaries of what's possible, you can take a rusty supply boat from the Gulf of Mexico and turn it into a ship that makes people believe in pirates again. And that, more than anything Davy Jones ever promised, is real magic.